Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we are starting on our new deck project in Lakewood, Washington. So if you like what you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified when we put out new content. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to comment below and hit that like button as well. All right, so we're building a really low deck and we're building it right over concrete. We only have like 3.5 inches of room for framing. So what we're doing is we're gonna frame it similar to this. This is something I did on my computer. There's some really funky radiuses going on. We're basically rebuilding the deck. We're no longer doing a curve over here because of that thing over there. That's a grinder pump. It cannot be moved, it cannot be lowered. It needs to have access from the city. So we're just like, you know what? No problem, we'll keep it square. So this part of the deck's remaining square now. And we have to add a beam about every 5 feet in here as well. And it's all, these are gonna be like 4x4 beams. And we're gonna hang 2x4s in between about every 5 feet into these sections. And then we're gonna be creating a curve. So we're gonna be doing some flat blocking in here, like this, to support our curved surface borders. So that takes some time, but we're gonna start by framing this section over here first. We have 9 footings to put in. I'm using pure blocks today. We don't use them very often, but in this instance, the deck is so low to the ground that that's what we decided to use instead of traditionally pouring concrete. So we're gonna get going on that. Let's see where we end up. Okay, it's 2. So this beam is gonna have to be, we'll have to cut it down again. It's probably gonna have to be in here somewhere, which is kind of right in our pipe way. But what I'm trying to do is just figure out where the footing should go. The footings, you know? Right here. Have to notch the beam, but it looks like, ooh. Well, I bet you have to come up.
Sliders
Lower than the,
yeah.
Right now we're setting our beams in place for the deck, and I set my elevation to the corner of the house thinking that was it, but then we just realized that the sliding door is a 1/2 inch lower than that. So we have to go back and lower a couple things because of that fact. So if we don't, and that's a good reason why sometimes it's better to set a ledger board in place before you get rolling, but I thought I was clear, so my bad. We're gonna clean this up right now. And then we're gonna double check some things. Or odds are we might have to pull this footing block and lower it a 1/2 inch because I think I'm maxed out on height. As far as, I might be able to lower it a little bit, but I don't know if I get a full 1/2 inch out of it. I need to go towards the house. Okay, can we drag it towards the house a little? Okay. All right, so since we're using pier blocks, and like I said before, we don't do this every day. We don't do this very often. We're more concrete pouring guys, but we have a really large grinder pump over here, and I'm not punching 2-foot deep holes. I already found one clean out pipe that scared the crap out of me because I thought I hit it with my rock bar. So we're using pier blocks on this job. If you don't like pier blocks, I understand. You don't need to leave a negative comment or anything like that. You can comment below if you want, but what we do when we do use pier blocks, we tamp the hole really well. Once we got it to depth, we're gonna tamp this hole. We're gonna make some dust, all right? So by doing that, it really firms up the bottom of the ground so that there's not gonna be much settling. Now these are adjustable pier blocks. I can go through and crank these up or down if I leave a little bit of gap in there for it to lower, and I can create a really nice firm setting. The old deck was built on pier blocks and it lasted 25 years, so I don't anticipate too many issues with this deck lasting on pier blocks either. But when we're doing it, we use a tamper to make sure that the hole is flat and that the whole base of the footing block is touching on earth. Instead of, if you don't have a flat hole, you have a dish, then it's only running on the perimeter of the footing block. So there you go. Almost not worth putting out. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're framing away on our current deck project. We're building a really low deck, which takes longer to build because we're hanging all of our framing in between our beams, and we're not used to building with this narrow of materials. We're only working with 3.5 inches of space. All right, let's show you what's going on. All right, so what we've done so far is we've laid out most of our beams, and part of this deck is framed in 2x6, and part of this deck is going to be framed in 2x4. And then we have two interior curves that are going to come around and match at a certain point. So this is a real tricky deck. It's real small. It's only 250 square feet, but it's going to probably take us 3 times longer to frame than a conventional deck because of all the complexities that we're running into as we build. So as you see over here, we also have a sewer grinder pump that we have to have access to. And part of this deck we framed in 2x6, which is pretty thin, but then some of it we're going right over the top of a concrete patio. So that has to be framed in 2x4 because that's all the space we have for. And it's also really at a level. So the old deck kind of sat right on the patio and it was starting to decay and rot. So this time we're lifting everything up about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So it keeps all of our framing off the ground. That way it doesn't rot or fall apart or decay. So you can see over here, what we're doing is we have a beam, a 4x4 beam about every 5 feet. And then we're spanning 2x4s every 12 inches on center in between those beams. And then from there, we're putting our joist hangers in and putting everything together and locking it all together. And now it's becoming a very solid structure so that we can eventually put in all of our field blocking, like you see over here, the flat blocking, so that we can put in all of our surface borders. So once we have all of our joists ran, then we'll start working on creating these curves. I had a lot of questions over the week about how we're mounting these 4x4s to the cement slab. This deck is super low to the ground. We're on a budget, and I'm just looking for ways alternatively to keep the lumber from touching the cement so it doesn't decay and rot. So what we did is we screwed different various thicknesses of shims. We used some TimberTech stock, some AZEK, some old composite shims and things like that. We use them quite often because they work great for keeping lumber up off the concrete, and they're not going to move and they're not going to swell or decay or rot. And then I used some red heads. These are sleeve anchors, all right? And what I did was I drove one on each side. These are just 3/8 inch by 3 inch sleeve anchors. Or actually, these are concrete anchors. I don't think they're sleeve anchors. I think this box is mislabeled. But put one on each side. I took a piece of composite shim and I stuck it out 2 inches past each side of the 4x4, and then I put an anchor on each side of this post. So the piece is screwed to the bottom of the 4x4, and now it will not move. It's nice and solid. And then we put another shim about mid-span of the 4x4, and then we use some Simpson ML24Zs to anchor the 4x4 so that it does not move right, left, or up, or down, or ever warp. So to do that, we took some drive nail anchors and we drilled some 1/4 inch holes in the ground, and then we just installed those. And there's three going into the concrete on each side. Now the concrete's only 4 inches thick, but we're only using an 1.5 inch nail, and that's with a 1/4 inch bit like so. And what that does is that keeps the 4x4 from ever wanting to warp or crown on us. These are nice and straight right now because they're still wet from the factory. So this is called pressure treated Hemlock. And the reason for these lines in the lumber is because they're called incisions. And incised lumber, it helps force the pressure treatment deeper into it so that you get a better treatment in the wood. That's how they do it on the West Coast. A lot of people from the East Coast and from overseas and Europe and everything, never seen this type of lumber before. It's my most asked questions on social media. All the time people are asking, hey doctor, what kind of lumber is that? It's called pressure treated Hemlock. Google it and you can see the whole process of how it's made and everything. So it's normal to me because I use this every day since for 30 years. So it's not weird or odd for me because that's what is available west of the Rockies. Okay, so that's what we're doing to anchor these 4x4s to the concrete so things don't move around. Once those are done, Nazee's coming in and adding our 2x4s to catch this span through here. So once that's done, then we're dialed. Starting to frame in for the circle, and so we have to create some spaces where we can hang joists from, and then I have to have a place where I can tie in some 2x material where I can cut some curves. So it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that to kind of create this space. I have two opposing circles coming in together, so I have to figure out how to blend those two spots with the least amount of complications. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I anchored over here. I have room to put a bracket in the concrete, kind of like we did on these pier blocks, to hold this end up, and this is going to be my supporting end for the points of both sections of these curves. So I have a 4-foot radius curve coming into here, and then I have a 7.5-foot radius curve coming into here, and here's my pivot points like so, and these two pivot points meet right here like that. So that's the outside edge of my deck where these two pivot points meet. So I've basically was able to pinpoint the outside tip edge of this deck, which is where I need some support, and I've got it right here. So now I should be able to tie everything from this point back going both directions, which is very helpful. It will allow me to finish framing this section of the deck and get all my 4-foot radius stuff done today probably, and then I can start framing up my 8-foot radius and or 7.5-foot radius, and I'll get that up to this point at least, if not further, by the end of the day. We'll see. We have to leave early today because we're gonna go pick up our deck boards. It's been a little tough lately because of COVID. A lot of supplies and materials aren't always available to us, so we kind of have to pick and choose. We wanted grooved boards for this deck. They don't have grooved boards, so we're going to use solid boards and then face screw them and Cortex them, which I'm not so much opposed to because of all the pine trees, all the pine needles that will fall on this deck over the years. We're gonna G-tape all the joists, and then all the pine needles will just fall in between, and it'll be a fast install for us. We'll lickety-splits this in. So once we have all the framing done, the hard part and the time-consuming part of this job is actually cutting in these curves and creating all these angles. And because we have a curved surface border going in, and then we have field decking going into that, we have to create spots on the deck where we can accommodate 5.5 inches of bent board, plus all of our, another at least 1.5 inches beyond that for our field board to be attached to. So it's just a lot of thought and process that goes into it. But now that I have this in, it'll make things a lot quicker for me to finish the rest of it. All right, so we have all our beams set, and Nazi has put in as much of the straight joist as he possibly can. So now we have to finish creating the inside curve. But what we're trying to do is finish this side first, because it's almost done, and then that one's complete. Then we can focus on getting this side buttoned up. Basically what I'm trying to do is create a spot where we have a surface border that's coming in that's bent around here, and I have a 1-inch piece of AZEK that's going to go in here, and then I still have to have enough room to screw down my deck boards that are going like this. Okay, so my deck boards are going like this, and I have a surface border going like this. So that's what this is all about. So as we come around here, the surface border is going to take up this much space, and then I have a place I can screw down all of my deck boards to as well. And I just use a lot of solid blocking like this because it's the most stable way to create that zone. Some people use joists sideways and they toenail them or toe screw them into the edges. That's fine. I do that as well. I do a hybrid of both. The way I create and shape and form my particular decks just depends on what's available, the height and the thickness of our framing. So now that this is done and I have everything's clear, I'll clear my 7 inches I need. I had to put in a small piece right here, but this will allow me to get my surface border in here and then still have the place. If I didn't put this block in here, I wouldn't have anywhere to put screws in. I have to remain a solid surface all the way around for a certain amount. So now all I have left to do is finish off these 2 bays right here, which is what I'm doing right now. Finish cutting this arc, and then I'll be ready for fascia. I will have to build out some spots underneath here with some blocking so that I can have a place to install some screws when I want to put my fascia, well actually it's my outside rim board, which I called fascia because it's actually going to be a piece of AZEK decking that we're going to use as our outside framing board, which is kind of cool. But besides that, that looks good. And we're just going to continue with that for the rest of the day, and then we'll come back Monday and start filling in the rest of this. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Still a little smoky out there. All right, so Friday we kind of got a certain part of this deck framed. You got to understand, I've been getting a lot of comments on social media about, wow, you've been framing for 3 days? Time to get to work, doctor. You're pretty slow. Anybody that makes a comment like that has never built a curved deck before. Plain and simple. Especially a reverse curve with 2 different radiuses that come to a sharp point. All right, so with that being said, what we're doing now is we're creating flat blocking for the perimeter of our curves, for our surface border, and so we have a place to attach our outside rim joist, which is actually going to be PVC, AZEK PVC. It is the most time-consuming part of this build. We do have an access panel that's going to take a minute to complete as well, We still have some other things to finish for our surface borders that are going up against the house, but for the most part, we're getting there. We're close. So we have this section finished, and this section finished, and almost that section, but don't tape that yet, no. That's 3/4 of this main circle, which is great, and then we just have the last section to frame in, which you'll get to watch us do today. So stay tuned. We'll see how we do with that. I think today a good goal for us is really to have this frame ready to lay down some deck boards, and then we're gonna start from this end over here, because I've committed to where the deck ends over here. I'm 100% committed. I cannot change where that deck starts or stops down there. So we're gonna start laying our deck boards down there, and then we're gonna work all the way this way. Now, if you come over here, you can see that I haven't finished this outside edge of the deck yet. That's for a reason, because I wanna finish my deck on a full deck board. I don't wanna have to rip a pie or a piece down 1.5 inches or attach something to the side of the decking to finish off my deck. I want it to finish on a full board. I also want this access panel to start and stop on full planks. When you're a professional deck builder, these are things you think about. You just don't frame something in and hope for the best and hope that it works out, because it'll never work out. You gotta pre-plan and think about what you're doing here. So this is all just remaining wild. You have to have patience. To be a really custom deck builder, you gotta have patience and wait and let the deck tell you where that's gonna end. Let the boards let you know where I need to cut this and put in this rim and add this blocking. And that's what we're doing right now, is we're just following the curve of this deck over here, but all this is gonna wait until I have all my deck boards laid up to about where this pressure blocking is. And once we get to that point, then we'll go back to framing. So this deck in particular, we're framers, then we lay decking, and then we go back to framing, and then we finish laying the deck. In my opinion, it's the best way to build something out without it looking like a cluster mess. So that's what we're up to today. We're doing really well over here. So we are getting the third section done. We have one more to do. We're gonna add some blocking underneath this board. So my goal on this deck is to not have any piece of treated lumber touching the concrete or the dirt. Nothing touches dirt, nothing touches concrete. This deck's gonna last 30+ years. The decking has a 50-year warranty. The frame with G-tape, you know, we'll get 30, 40 years out of the frame. These people are gonna be long gone before this deck wears out, but whoever owns this property next will enjoy this deck for many years to come. With all that being said, we're just gonna hit back to it, and let's see where we end up today. Hopefully we get the decking off the truck, but it's still stable, so we may end up just hauling it back home for one more day and then bringing it back tomorrow if we need to. I don't know. It's not, for me, it's not a race. We are not in a race to try and get this deck framed. It's really important that you understand that. This is art. It's not construction, you know, it's art first. And if it doesn't look right, or if we go ahead and try to skip ahead and forget something, I already forgot to do the blocking up against the house for my surface border. So now we have to, after we get all these curves done, before we can start laying decking, we have to add all that as well. That was my bad. That's when I started on my layout. So when you don't think about it and you just get excited and you just want to start laying decking, you can really cut yourself short by not taking the time to plan it out and do it correctly. So if you learn anything from this video today, it's take a little bit of time, think about what you're doing before you just jump in. All right, let's get to it. So what I've done here is I've taken a 2x12 and I've framed it into the beam, the joist, and that beam over there. So I have a nice flat block, but it needs some support. So what I'm gonna do is I've been adding little blocks of PVC wherever I have to, like right here, so that this board, when you step on it, doesn't go down, and it's not gonna hurt the it's not gonna hurt this piece by sitting on the concrete. It's just a little extra support. We still have a rim board that we're gonna put in here, which I'm gonna have to rip down to different elevations so it'll fit. But that goes in a minute after we have all the blocking installed. what this does is it gives me a place to support this, but it also gives me a place to attach screws for my outside rim board that we're going to be bending into this shape.
Using this G-tape is acting as our flashing. So I'm taking this 4-inch G-tape, trying to put it on top of the joist and then against the foundation of the house and kind of make like an L shape like this, so any water that goes through will hit the top here and then shoot right out. Yeah, we'll see how that works. If I can breathe first. Can't see my mouth today, so now I don't have to look at my side mouth talking. So I am measuring out. We're going to put some mid-span pressure blocking on these joists because they are a little bit of bounce to them. So I'm gonna take some 2x4s, cut those up to my lengths, and then attach to the bottom of the 2x4s this AZEK fascia, I believe. And that way the 2x4 is not sitting directly on the ground. It's not going to rot. This one will rot. And it'll stay protected and be good for many, many years.
Every time we make a cut, and you've probably heard this before, you've seen it, we put end grain solution on any open or exposed cuts. That way it protects the wood from decay and termites and all kinds of other stuff. We use a product called Q-Tech Extreme, which is a really high quality stain and preservative, but we use it for end cuts because we like the way it absorbs into the wood and it doesn't smell. And it's a superior protection. So once you do this and you assemble everything, you're never going to do that again. So you want to use something high quality that's going to last a long time. All right, so getting a little thick over here, but I have an outside rim joist that's a 4x6, right? But a 4x6 isn't quite wide enough to accommodate my flat surface border plus the field decking that I need to screw right next to it. It's kind of thin. It would put all my screws right close to the edge of this 4x6, and when you have a row of screws like that, it's not the greatest. We're Cortexing this deck because there's no groove boards available for several weeks because of COVID. So we ordered a solid plank and we're going to Cortex the whole deck just by face screwing and Cortexing it. So I added a 2.5-inch cleat to this 4x6, so I have a good place to install my screws for my field decking, okay? And then once that was done, I had to add an extra joist to keep my 12 inches on center. So that's what this is, and what I decided to do was notch this joist because I didn't have a solid 4x material to butt into, to tie it into. So what I did was I took this joist and I ran it all the way underneath this block here, and now I'm shimming it up underneath. So if you look under here, this 2x4 has been notched. So to accommodate underneath this board here. And now I'm gonna shim this and then I'm gonna screw through it right into the shims. And I'm gonna do that in a couple spots underneath here so that this joist doesn't have a tendency to split in the future. I doubt it will because it's kind of overbuilt, but it's thin framing, and when you're doing thin framing, you got to be innovative and kind of figure out what you're doing and how you're going to do it. There's no rhyme or reason. Everything today was made up completely out of my head. It changes every single time we do something weird like this. So, but now that it's almost done, I got this thing licked now, so my stress levels are down a little bit, and I'm looking forward to getting some field decking laid here soon, and then start bending some deck boards. So.
didn't even touch the framing.
Pretty close though, huh? Belt sander would do it too though. Better be good.
Find out.
Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're laying decking. It's my namesake. It's the core of what we do. We framed this deck. Yesterday we got a lot of progress done. We have about 3/4 of the deck laid. Then we ran into some issues. Not really issues, but just things we had to do to finish off the deck. I'll explain those in a minute. You really can't see it right now because we have some deck boards in the way, but we had to create an access panel for the sewer grinder pump. So that's buttoned up now. We have 2 layers of Nilo sheet, which is no longer available. Unfortunately, that company went out of business. But Nilo sheet is basically a fiberglass panel that has recycled carpet and resin as the core. It's waterproof and it will never rot. So I scored like 20 sheets of this stuff when they went out of business, and I've been slowly drawing off of that for future deck builds for access panels and things where I know it's going to get really wet, and if I just stick some 2x material to the bottom of it, it's going to rot out eventually. So it's all been G-taped and ready to go, and once we cut that away, I'll show it to you what it looks like and how it works. So I'm also creating another little access for a clean out below the surface. We were having issues trying to figure that out. We got that all figured out, so I'm going to get that installed. We still have a lot of cortexing to do today, a lot of plugging, and we're gonna get around to all that. Just follow along, see how we do. And we're just gonna get ready to start laying some more deck boards. You'll notice on the deck, there's some chalk to get our lines nice and straight and to keep them that way. We're basically have been laying 5 deck boards at a time. And so we're using these spacers right here that you can get from the AZEK and TimberTech webpage. And we use those, and we have these special clamps that we're able to clamp 5 boards together at once, and then we chalk the lines, and then we screw them off with our Cortex screws. So anyway, so we're just gonna go ahead and finish building out over this panel, and then we'll try to finish out the rest of the deck today. Well, everyone makes mistakes, right? Even me. So I got really ahead of myself, and we're putting an alternate colored border on this deck, but I went ahead and laid the last deck in the same color. So I gotta pull this board now and throw it away. Cost me 50 bucks. Originally, when we tore this old deck out, we thought we were just dealing with the grinder pump. And we started digging around because we had some footings to place because we built the deck a little more robust than the one that was here before it. And we discovered there was a clean out that had been buried and we had no idea was down here. So I wanted to leave access for whoever has to ever deal with this grinder pump. They can see that there's a clean out as well from inside, and then they can pull this section of the deck board up and be able to get to it. I'm doing a test cut to depth to see how deep my track saw is going to cut. I'm trying not to cut the G-tape, but I'm also trying to get these boards cut to the right depth so I can just snap them off or pull them away. So I'm kind of looking for a paper thin piece of the decking to be still attached at the bottom. So I'm gonna just run this saw really quick and see what I got before I cut this entire line. Okay, it looks like I'm a little deep because I was able to drop that piece. I want them to kind of still hang on when I cut. That's why I'm running a test, so I can kind of dial in my depth before I actually make my cut. All right, so that's the depth I want. That when I cut these, I'm not actually cutting through the tape like I did right here. This is pretty thin though. I cut through the tape, but I didn't actually cut the top of the joist. But I want my boards to cut like this so that I can just come through and break these off. And there's like a paper thin layer that I can use a utility blade on without really damaging the tape. They're still kind of hanging on, but I'm not actually cutting through like I did here. So I'll take another piece of G-tape and cover this up, but that's the depth. So now I've got my track saw set to depth. I can go ahead and make all my cuts.
So yeah, we're just vortexing right now. I think I've used like 3 different styles of plugs. These are the originals, where they just tossed them in a bag like this. And it's not bad, but the new collated ones, like these, are much easier. These are actually the mid model. So the new ones, the little plastic here is much thicker. So sometimes with these old ones, the plugs will just fall out if you rip them or this and that. But with this collated model, you can just put your thumb behind the plug, and it's much quicker than having to fumble through these guys and get the grain right. So yeah, check them out. Cortex is cool.
Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we're out in the lab. We are deckboard bending. Do one of those really cool dun 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 dun. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, with deckboard bending in it with fire. And it's all about deckboard bending today. It's an art that we do. You've seen our build. You've seen how far we've gone with our build. You've seen us build all these curves. And now it's time to put the secret sauce on this deck. And we had to take a day away from the job site so that we could create these boards and be able to install them. So it's kind of tricky, a lot to learn. If you're really interested in learning how to become a deckboard bender, I'd suggest checking out Dr. Deck's Masterclass. It's available through our Shopify account, or if you just Google Dr. Deck's Masterclass, I'm sure it'll pop up somewhere. And consider learning how to become a heat bender and being able to sell those curved decks and generate more income because of it. And also increase your skill set, become an artist, and just do some cool stuff. So we are ready to pull this first board out and we're ready to rock it out. So this thing's ready to go. This is Deckboard Bending 101. Here we go. You ready? I do feel a couple blisters on the bottom of the board.
Top looks okay so far.
Yeah, top looks good. Sides look good. He's stretching the heck out of this thing. Awesome. Hold on. All right, so this board got really hot. The thing about HeatCon silicone heating blankets is you have to use 2 10-foot kits to heat a 20-foot board. It's really hard sometimes to keep both sides of the board at the same temperature. One side was running a little hot this morning, and I'm gonna take my finger, and you can see how pliable this decking is right now. I could actually ruin it by pushing my finger into it. So you got to be careful when you're doing this type of work that you don't overheat the boards. We were pushing this one to its threshold. It had a couple small blisters on the bottom, but it's looking good. So now that's our loose radius. That's a 7'6" or 7'5" radius, I think. And now we're gonna get into a 4-foot radius. Get in there. No, that's good. Yeah, that turned out good. All right, so now that we have the surface borders bent for our deck, we need to heat up a couple boards at a lower temperature and bend the fascia boards. Those will be the front side to cover up all the framing on the deck, and that's one thing that we need to button up next week on our project. So what we're gonna do now that these boards are cooled, we're gonna strip the back side of the forms away, pull the deck boards out, and then we'll slip the new hot board on edge to create a nice fascia for the fronts of the curves on the deck we're building right now. Your way at all, or are we good? That's so weird that okay. Your end wasn't pushed in all the way, was it? Boy, it's sitting pretty good. Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we are trying to button up this deck. I'm not sure if we'll get there, but we're doing some curved surface borders, and we're also running some fascia boards and trying to button up some things, adding Cortex screws, just finish work. Doing a lot of finish work today, so follow along. If you like what you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified when you're putting out fresh content. Don't forget to like and comment below as well. We'll try to get back to you with a comment back as soon as possible. All right, let's check it out.
taking this torpedo level and going back after Jay sets these screws. Even though we install it straight, sometimes naturally they dip in. So when you screw in with Cortex, it follows the direction of the board. So I'm just taking this guy and, you know, making sure it's level, because sometimes it can go way in, it can go way out. And then with Cortex, you're able to, for a little bit of fixing, I guess the word is, for lack of a better word, is to pull it out. So that one's not completely level. I can barely unscrew it and get it pretty close to level. So that's what I'm doing, and then I'm going to come back through and put the plugs in, and it should be good.
All right, so this morning we cut all the deck boards in, we sanded them out, we filed the edges, we installed our surface borders, we Cortexed them, and now we're doing kind of a tricky fascia install. I've got a really sharp point over here, and I'm trying to keep it sharp. We got this piece up, which is great. Nas is straightening it out, and then he's gonna put all the corks in it so it looks good. I'm going to start templating up the next piece. We have an elevation issue where I think the fascia board is going to be taller than the deck, so I'm going to have to scallop the bottom of it, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So I think I'm going to start by scalloping the board and then get it in place and then get it marked over there, the easy one. And then this last point, this last sharp point will be the difficult part of this project. I think it's going to look good sharp. And I'm going to leave it sharp, so don't walk by this too close because you might cut yourself. Alright, so I have my last piece of curved fascia ready to go, except that it's too high in one spot right here. I'm going to have to adjust the bottom of this board by cutting a little bit out of it so that it just drops it a little bit. But it only needs, you know, maybe 8 feet of it cut out. I don't have to trim down the whole thing, just one specific spot in the board. I tried to do it upside down, but that didn't work because when you flip the board back over, it would have put the cut in the wrong spot. So I just have to mark it from the top and then guesstimate how much I need to take off the bottom, cut it, see if it fits. I need about a ½ inch out of the bottom. We'll go 5/8 just to clear. Not that one. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate you coming along with us on this deck build. We're pretty much buttoned up, so your prescription has been filled. If you like what you saw, please hit that subscribe button and click that bell icon if you want to be notified when we're putting out new content, which is always 5 days a week. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and comment on our videos and share them around. Share them with your family and your friends, and help us build our page to world domination of outdoor living. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.